Hey Virgo, this is Michael with another monthly reading for you. We're going to be looking at September 2022. And I've really been tuning in with your energy, and honestly, I've had a very hard time settling in to this collective, which is interesting because I have a lot of Virgo followers. I have a Virgo stellium in my own chart. I have a lot of Virgo energy. And it was interesting that there was almost this restlessness with the energy for you. And it's almost like in trying to hyper-focus on one specific thing or trying to get something done, it's like your mind is kind of going in circles and you're not actually going anywhere. So that's sort of energy to pay attention to for this month. I do also feel like I feel like with the astrology this month in particular, you might just be very frazzled. And the reason I say that is because Mercury is going to be going retrograde in Libra on the 9th. And for those of you who aren't aware, Mercury is your ruling planet. Mercury goes retrograde about 3 to 4 times a year. And so Virgos and Geminis, which are both ruled by Mercury, are very affected during these times. And when Mercury goes retrograde, it can make us really have to turn our focus within. It can bring up a lot of turbulence or a lot of delays or miscommunications or misunderstandings because Mercury represents the mind. It represents communication. And so I feel like for a lot of you, you're kind of scrambled this month. And even before Mercury officially goes retrograde on the 9th, it is slowing down because before Mercury goes backwards in the sky, it starts slowing down a lot. And that almost feels like that hyper-focus I was picking up on kind of before I hit record here. And Mercury does actually go back into your sign, which is kind of interesting. I just want to double check when that's happening. I have all of my notes down here, and you can also find the astrology blog on my website. All of my links are in the description box. But the energy is just very, it's very scattered here with Moth. And what do we have? Why am I not finding this? It's on the 23rd, actually, which is the day that the sun enters Libra. So we enter Libra season. Mercury is actually going back into your sign, and that's also the same day as the conjunction between Mercury and the sun. They kind of pass each other as Mercury is going backwards and the sun is going forwards. They meet. And we will talk about that in just a moment. But this Moth card is the first one that actually came out. And oftentimes when this Moth card comes, it's a very fluttery energy. And moths are drawn to fire, as we so know through colloquial expression, kind of drawn to the flame here. But this really feels like in trying to go for an immediate solution, Virgo, you might burn yourself. You might burn yourself out. You might be engaging in self-destructive behavior because you're trying to get things done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And if there is one piece of advice I have for you this month, it's slow down. There might be a lack of clarity. You might be mistaken because the reason that moths are actually drawn to fire is because they use light. They use starlight. They use moonlight to navigate. And interesting that there is a storm going on outside right now too. There's really a lot going on, it feels like, for this group. And I feel like there's almost this dark night energy where you're going through this transformation. And I'm going to be completely honest. I feel like you're almost so hyper aware of yourself. You feel like everyone is seeing you make mistakes and mess up. And I don't actually think that's happening. I feel like you're putting on a pretty solid front. But you internally just feel very scattered and having a very hard time focusing. And this energy really is a time to really connect to your intuition. You're not going to have a lot of clarity necessarily, but it's just like kind of pondering things, being open to things like, I kind of have a feeling that this might happen. I wonder what that's about. So just pay attention to your intuition this month too. Let's actually pull some tarot cards. But I feel like it's kind of interesting that Virgo is in its season, entering into your season, and your ruling planet is going retrograde. It's honestly not like the best hand that you've been given. Because this is kind of like your time to shine. The spotlight is on you with the sun in your sign, and then Venus enters your sign at the end of this month as well. And Venus represents beauty, it represents attraction. There's a lot of eyes that are on you right now. Oh boy. Okay, I'm just going to start reading what I already pulled. We're going to get some more cards in a moment. But the first card I have for you is the Devil. And the Devil can really be about feeling stuck, feeling like you can't move forward, feeling like someone has power over you or a situation has power over you. I feel like a lot of you are feeling like you don't know how to get your power back. And you're trying to find a solution, you're trying to see something clearly. I actually feel like some of you could also be dealing with someone or dealing with addictions yourself. Like, addictions can come up with this card, and for some reason that kind of resonates for me, actually, for you. And there's just some sort of moment here. I feel like you don't have boundaries, or you're just realizing how much you violate your own boundaries. That's coming forward with this Devil card. Some of you may be involved with the Capricorn energy because the Devil represents Saturn, which is the planetary ruler of Capricorn, as well as Aquarius. And Saturn is actually in Aquarius. Saturn has been in Aquarius since 2020, and it's going to be in Aquarius until the end of this year, into 2023. And that part of your chart does rule over health and wellness and taking care of yourself. And it feels like you really need to be focusing on that right now. There's a lot of emphasis on that right now for you. And it's like, you know what you need to do, but you haven't been doing it. And it's almost like, I'll get to that when I finish this, but you're not going to finish what you need to finish or get it done in an efficient way if you aren't taking care of yourself. So that's something that's coming forward. We do also have Judgment. Like, you know what the Devil energy is in your life. You know it's not in alignment for your desires or for the life you're trying to live. I feel like this group is actually very self-aware. You know what's going on. You see kind of the way your mind is turning and tossing, and you know what it is that you need to do, but you're still kind of believing in this story. Like, no, I still need to try to do this. I still need to finish this thing. It's a very hyper-focused energy, which is interesting. And I think a lot of you are specifically focused on finances. Some of you feel like finances are holding you back. Or maybe there is even some sort of financial control. This could even be coming from a partner or from a friend. Some of you may have borrowed money to someone or received money from someone, and that's also kind of a way that you feel bound to someone, which is interesting. There's almost kind of like a financial or even material sort of abuse or resource abuse that's going on. And I think you know that. I think you see some sort of situation as not aligned for you. And this could even just be a workplace situation, but I feel like for some of you, there is something about money being a source of control in a relationship. This could just be with a boss. And the card for the present energy is the Ace of Swords in reverse. And this is exactly what we've been talking about with Mercury retrograde. This is a lack of clarity. This is a lack of direct communication. This is not seeing things clearly. And so it's interesting You have the Ace of Swords in reverse, but you do have Judgment here. You are aware of the bigger picture in your life. And for some reason, like, that isn't connecting. It's not connecting to you that things aren't lining up. That your ideals, your vision, your wellness, you know what it is that you need to be striving towards or working towards, and yet your mind is not working in that direction right now, or you're not going in that direction for some reason. Like, you're not able to see it fully. It's almost like you're aware at this point, like, what you're not seeing. You might be aware that someone is hiding the truth from you in some way, or there is something that is being kept secret. Maybe you're the one keeping the secret. Interesting. And we have the Queen of Swords in reverse, showing up as a challenge. And interestingly, this is Libra energy. We are entering into Libra season in the second half of this month. So that's just kind of an interesting thing to notice. But I feel like someone's being very indirect with you. Or maybe even in the reverse, they're being very hostile or aggressive or just shutting down. Like, there's not effective communication this month. Communication feels very, very impeded this month. And maybe you're just not coming across the right way. Maybe you're having a hard time expressing yourself, which is interesting. I wonder if for some of you this is involving a romantic relationship, like there might be a lack of clarity in a romantic relationship. We do have a full moon in Pisces, your opposite sign, which represents that area of your life that does pertain to partnership and romance, but it can also be business partnership or just anyone you really share a life with in a very personal way, or very connected way. Yeah, there's someone who's not communicating very well. Fortunately, we do have the Hierophant here. And I think, especially when Mercury goes retrograde back into your sign on the 23rd, there really is this focus on you and reflecting on you and what you value and your spirituality in particular, because the Hierophant represents spirituality, it represents tradition, it represents belief systems. I feel like a lot of you really do need to like have a spiritual practice, and maybe I'm even speaking to myself. Like, I feel like you really need to commit to your meditation practice. Like, if you've been kind of missing some days, or even have like just a large chunk of time where you haven't meditated or done these mindfulness practices, I think you really need to commit to that. That is something that you just need to prioritize above all else this month. And really focus on simplifying things right now. Be very flexible. There's a lot of energy where it's like the more you try to make something happen, it's like the more you're digging yourself in this resistant state, and you're just agitating yourself, you're frustrating yourself. And so it's really kind of an intense energy, I'm not gonna lie. It feels very much like you're trying to get yourself out of a bad situation. And it's almost like you know you need to get out of a situation, but you don't know how. And so you're trying to do things, you're trying to be effective, you're trying to be efficient, but it's not going to work if you're not coming from a very centered and spiritual place here. And that kind of reminds me of the Moth energy again as well, because Moth is about this transformation. It's about going within. And sometimes this feels disconnected. Sometimes this feels like being cut off from the world. I don't think there is a quick fix. It's like, that. There isn't a quick fix. There isn't an easy way forward. So the way forward is going within and meditating and really having this strong spiritual foundation, which I do feel like many of you are going to be gravitating towards the end of the month, which is very interesting. We do also have a new moon in Libra, which represents the part of your life pertaining to finances and material things. And the Hierophant does represent Taurus energy, which naturally rules over the second house, that financial part of astrology. And I feel like you are coming into more stability, or you're manifesting more stability. You might not feel stable by the end of this month, but I feel like there's something very deep happening, and Mercury in your sign is going to be harmonizing, trining with Pluto in Capricorn. That's going to happen on the 27th, and I really do get this very spiritual energy from this. I feel like the end of the month, you have a lot of wisdom. You're accessing a lot of wisdom that for some reason you're having a hard time connecting to at the beginning of this month. Let's kind of pull some more cards here. Let's clarify some things. I actually want to pull an oracle card. What is the oracle message? I'm going to be using the Starseed Oracle. I've been using the Star Spinner deck for those of you who are interested. All of those links are in the description box if you ever want to look at one of the decks I use. We have Earth School, life lessons, soul growth, study, and higher learning. And I think we really are just in this cycle right now where a lot of Virgos are having a lot of spiritual downloads or epiphanies. This is happening because we have Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which for you represents wisdom and education and travel, things that kind of represent the world at large in a way. And so I feel like you're learning a lot just from your life. Like, if you're trying to figure out how can I connect spiritually, how can I reach that state, it's been around you the whole time. And it's like, I feel like a big lesson for this month is like, you're realizing how spirit is constantly communicating with you. The universe is constantly communicating with you. You just have to pay attention. And I'm kind of getting that with this Earth School message as well. And I do feel like there is a lot of learning that's happening this month. And maybe that's why you feel like you've lost your edge. I don't feel like you've lost your edge at all. I think you're kind of taking a step back, and it's not about you cutting through something or dissecting something right now. Because you've been so focused on the small, the microcosmic, that you've lost sight of the macrocosmic. And I mean, with this Earth School card, it's not like you're not supposed to be living your life. Like, I hate the advice with Mercury retrogrades where it's like, don't do this, don't do that. Like, don't buy anything, don't sign a contract. Like, yeah, if you can avoid those things, sure, that's great. But the truth is, like, most of us don't have the privilege to just not live our lives during Mercury retrograde. We kind of have to keep going. And so, like, just being open, being flexible right now is really important. Interesting. We do also have Karmic Relationships on the table. And this is Orion energy, polarity, soul growth, and conflict. You have soul growth on both of these cards. There's a lot of spiritual growth for you this month. And it's almost like the reason there is this spiritual growth is because, like, you have the Judgment on the table. You know what the bigger picture is supposed to look like. You've had this, like, very vivid or profound realization of something. Or this strong sense of like, no, this is what I need to be living like. This is what my life needs to look like. But it doesn't look that way right now. It feels like you're so far between these 2 points. And I really do feel like for some of you, there's a lot coming up in your relationships, coming ahead. I actually do feel like there could even be, there could be something with, like, deception And I'm not saying that like your partner's lying to you or cheating on you necessarily, but there could be something that isn't out in the open either. But with the full moon in Pisces coming together with Neptune, it's almost like a bubble is being popped in your life. Like there's this thing that's sort of dissolving. And it's possible. There could be a change in a relationship for some of you. I definitely see some challenging energy with the devil. And like this whole year really has had a lot of focus on your relationships, Virgo. It has. It's been a year of you learning how to relate to people, learning about your own attachment styles, learning about boundaries and intimacy. And I feel like something has gotten to a point where it's like, you no longer know what isn't healthy, what's not healthy for you. And how much of your energy can you invest in this? How can you move forward? Some of you might feel like you're a moth to a flame. You keep ending up in the same cycles or patterns. I do kind of feel like a relationship vibe with this, but maybe this is just what your life feels like in general. And I did have this sort of like message at the very beginning. It feels like you're going in circles. But let's read these cards. Let's actually kind of break down these two Starseed Oracle cards. Let's start with Earth School. Planet Earth is a great initiation for the soul, and life lessons are the curriculum for which we enroll. These aren't one-time lessons, but themes we choose to circle around. Interesting. Deepening our experience of them as we make our way through the spiral of life. Life lessons aren't only about getting it right, they're also about getting it wrong. Remembering that Earth is a planet of polarity which helps this understanding. Each year the study deepens more and more. If you pull this card while you're going through a difficult time, you're being prompted to remember that your soul came here to grow and learn. Try not to look at difficult times as getting it wrong. Instead, see them as opportunities for soul growth. If you can find a way to grow and soften your heart through the highs and lows, your soul is most definitely growing, which is the whole point. Pulling this card also means that you're being called to embark on a new area or study of growth. This could be through structured learning, such as university, school, or a training course. If you're having difficulties in a relationship, you're being reminded that these are opportunities for soul growth. After all, relationships are known as the #1 way that we grow as souls while we're here on Earth. How are you being called to grow or learn? And I think this is actually a perfect card for you because it feels like you're going in circles, but I do think of growth as a spiral. And like, even if you come back into the same pattern or situation or similar energy in some respect, you're still expanding outward, you're still growing, you're still coming with all the lessons and awareness that you have. And I feel like some of you are blindsided. Like, I thought I was done. I thought I had grown. I thought I had realized something. And it's like, yeah, you've been here before, but now you're back here with even more wisdom. So there is this kind of circular spiral energy. I'm so glad that came up. And again, there is a lot of learning with Uranus and Taurus, and that is actually being very activated for you this month as well, because we have all of these planets moving through your sign, harmonizing with Uranus and Taurus. And this is very much like internal learning as well. You know, it talked about structured learning. Maybe some of you are going to school, but I really feel like it's more about like what you take away from the things you're learning as opposed to like what you're actually being taught, which is kind of interesting. And we also have the Karmic Relationships card. Yeah, I feel like some of you are learning a lot from your relationships this month. And I think specifically with the full moon in Pisces around the 10th, like there's almost like this full volume blast, like, hey, pay attention here. Like something is going on in your relationships or like the way you think about relationships. The constellation Orion is thought by many to have been a place of great polarity and eventually unity. Some believe that many starseeds who were part of this cosmic history are now incarnate on Earth and are playing out karmic relationships from Orion times. Perhaps you're one of them. Polarity causes conflict and highlights separation. However, because of this, conflict can also result in unity and growth. Too many misunderstandings are caused when we don't open our heart and mind and see things from a different point of view. When we go into a reactive second-guessing mode instead of gathering the courage to open our heart, we should admit that we may have reacted because of our own woundings and then find mutual ground. So I feel like a lot of you are getting triggered by something, and this does kind of feel more like a relationship thing. Could also be pertaining to finances. I'm sorry. With this Queen of Swords in reverse, this is almost that triggered energy. I feel like a lot of you are feeling triggered this month because it feels like you're repeating patterns. We're all innocent children looking to be seen, understood, and cherished. It's much harder to grow closer through conflict than it is to grow further apart. And yet that's the invitation of conflict. It's easy to react and take things personally. It's more challenging to see the innocence of all involved and find a way to grow closer through the conflict. It's through relationships that we grow the most. How can you soften your heart and drop your defenses enough to see things from a different point of view? How can you see the innocence of all involved? How can you learn to see the similarities rather than the differences? What relationships do you find the most challenging? How can you see things from a different perspective? How are you being called to allow growth through conflict? So I feel like some of you are trying to have boundaries, some of you are trying to see things logically, but you are still coming from a wounded or triggered place. And so I really want you to just track how your emotions are coloring your perceptions. And I feel like it's almost like you might need to take a step back and really gather yourself before you can actually have these conversations. Fortunately, Mercury does go direct on October 2nd, so we're not going to be in this energy very long into the next month at all. We're kind of wrapping it up into October. And I'm just going to be completely truthful. You know I am with you guys. There's a lot of turbulence in this season, this upcoming season in autumn or in spring if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And there really is this need to kind of be flexible and to be very present and to have this sort of spiritual mastery. I think this is why this card is coming into play. Spiritual wisdom is going to be very helpful for a lot of you this month. And I think specifically around September 14th, September 13th, when the moon is also in Taurus and working together with Uranus, there could be some downloads. And then finally, I just want to say too, like looking at the astrology, we have Venus entering your sign on the 23rd, and then we have a new moon in Libra on the 25th. The end of the month is a really good month for you to manifest material things and finances and stability, especially if things have felt very entrapping. So that might be a good time to create some new foundations for you. I feel like there's just a lot of confusion. We have the sun opposing Neptune, which is confusion, spirituality, intuition, dreams, delusions, in Pisces. And this is happening the same day that Venus in your sign is also squaring with Gemini. Having some sort of conflict. There's a lot of conflict towards the middle of the month. There's a lot of like, is this you or me? There's a lot of projection that's going on this month, and it's very hard for you to figure out what is a projection and what's actually like kind of a more objective reality of things. So that's something to just kind of track. It's very hard to tell what's real, especially towards the middle of the month between you and other people. Mercury is retrograde. It's a very, very confusing energy. And so I really want to encourage you to just slow down. And honestly, I don't think you can make any really big decisions. And if you do, it has to wait until the end of the month. And it's so funny how I said that about Mercury retrograde. Like, I hate that advice. I really think you should avoid making big decisions if you can. Obviously, you have to live your life. You have to do something. If there's a timeline or deadline that you have to meet, by all means, do what you have to do. Sorry, we got cut off right at the end there. I don't know why that happens in this camera. I've tried adjusting the settings. But I pretty much said everything I needed to. There is one last thing I really want to touch on. I kind of briefly touched on that before. We do have the Sun in Libra forming a conjunction with Mercury on the 23rd. And this is happening again right before Mercury goes back into Virgo and the Sun is moving forward into Libra. Or the Sun already moves into Libra on the 22nd. This is actually what's called a cazimi, which is when a planet goes into the heart of the Sun. It's super close together. And there is this kind of epiphany. I feel like that's when things kind of shift for you. And that might be this time where you really start to have more clarity. So if you do need to make some big decisions, again, I feel like around that cazimi, the 23rd of September, is going to be a very good time for you to kind of like have a moment to really finish what you need to finish during this Mercury retrograde cycle. And again, fortunately, we will be out of it by October. But there's a lot going on astrologically, and sometimes that's just the tides of life. I kept looking at these tides here, and I really think it's like just allowing things to be crazy right now. Sometimes you just have to be very open. And there's actually a Japanese phrase that is coming to mind, shogunai, which basically means it can't be helped. And what I really love about this phrase, it's almost more like a mindset. When people use this phrase, when people say, well, shogunai, the car's broken, gotta get it fixed, it's like, don't put undue stress on yourself. Like, it's almost like the moment we start saying, like, this shouldn't be happening, I shouldn't be feeling this way, that's when we have this very thorny response inside of us. That's when things really feel like the devil energy. We feel stuck, we feel the pain, we feel the hurt. And I will say it's very interesting to me how you go from the devil all the way to the Hierophant throughout this month. So there is so much spiritual growth that you're going through, and you are really being refined. I hope you find peace in that. I hope you find something that centers you if you are going through a hard time. And, you know, if this reading just doesn't resonate or doesn't feel like it's for you, then you are more than welcome to check out the videos for your moon or rising sign. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I do have an astrology chart calculator in the description box down below. And again, if you would like to book a reading or even a distance Reiki session, I actually think this group might benefit from some Reiki this month. You can book that on my website as well. And I will see you all in the next video. I'm wishing you all the best. I'm sending all my love your way. Take care of yourselves, Virgo. Until we meet again.